Hi guys, and welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be canning some beans. So the kind of beans we're canning today are red kidney beans, and I have these 1 pound bags, and I'm going to be using 2 1/4 pounds. My recipe is from the Ball Guide to Preserving, and it is a well-tested recipe, so you know it will be good. It calls for 2 1/4 pounds, so I did 2 1 pound bags, and then I just tried to do about 1/4 of the 3rd bag. This ended up making exactly 8 pints, so it says it makes 6. If you want to do 6, I would just do the 2 pounds. The next step is just to rinse off your dried beans to get any dust or debris from the packaging off of them. So just cover them with at least 1 inch of water and kind of move them around, get all the water in between all the beans to clean them off, and then just drain them into a colander. Next, we're going to put the beans into a large pot, and then we're going to pour enough water to cover them by 2 inches. Now you're going to put your beans on the stove, bring them up to a boil them for 2 minutes, and then you're going to turn off the heat and let them sit for an hour. If you're new to canning, that's awesome. Don't be afraid of it. I'm pretty new to canning myself, but I've been looking up as much information as I can from really reliable, safe sources, and I'm gonna link a bunch of information down in the description if you're interested in learning more about how to safely can your food and the different types of canning and all that fun stuff. So for today, I am gonna be using the recipe that is in my the Ball Blue Book Guide to Preserving, which is one of the most trusted recipe guides for canning. You really want to stick with the trusted ways of doing things because they've been well tested and you won't get sick and give your family botulism. So the recipe here is for beans or peas dried, and there's all these different types of beans, and we're doing kidney beans today. Okay, so at this point I have let the beans soak. They've been in here for an hour. They've actually been here a little longer than an hour. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drain them in the colander in the sink, and I'm gonna put fresh water in up to 2 inches again, and then I'm going to cook them on a low simmer with a lid on it for 30 minutes. Now that we're waiting for the beans to cook, I'm going to go ahead and grab my mason jars, and these are Ball jars. They're pint-sized ones, and first I am going to clean out my sink and clean it and sanitize it and all that, and then I'm going to wash my jars and get them nice and clean. I'm going to scrub the jars, the lids, and the bands with just some regular old dishwashing liquid and hot water, and get them nice and clean, and that way they'll be ready to go when it's time to start canning. Alright, so while the beans are getting hot and coming up to a boil, I'm gonna go ahead and get my canner ready. So I have to put the insert, the little rack in the bottom, and 2 inches of water in it, and I need to bring it up to a simmer. And I want to go ahead and get that done now, so whenever the beans are done, it's all hot and ready to go. It's really important when you're canning that you get everything done at the right time, and you gotta really make sure you follow the rules and do exactly what it says. So that's what I'm gonna do now. My canner comes with this rack. It actually has 2 of them if you want to do 2 layers of jars. So I'm going to put this in the bottom. First I'm going to open it up. So here's the big heavy lid. And on this canner you always want to check and make sure that there's no like food stuck in the little holes where the pressure gauge or the pressure valve will be, where the steam comes out. You want to make sure everything is nice and clean in there, and mine is, so just keep an eye out for that. So I'm going to put my rack in the bottom. I'm going to put it so it's like a little platform in there. And now I'm going to put water in it so there's 2 inches of water in the bottom. Okay, so now that I got the water in there, I'm going to turn the heat on. And I'm going to put it on high because we want to get it up to a simmer. And then once it starts to simmer, I'll just turn it down. And I'm just going to leave that on just a simmer until it's time to go, and then we'll turn it up whenever we start actually canning, and we'll follow all the instructions and I'll show you that as well. Oh, one more thing is really important with this canner is that you have to oil the rim right around here where the seal is made, the metal to metal seal. So I'm gonna do that real quick. So here I just have some olive oil, and I'm just going to grab a paper towel and just dab a little bit on there, like so. And we're just gonna wipe it around the rim. All right, there we go. And it's just on the All-American canner, there's this beveled little edge right on the inside here, just past the top here. If you go down, it's like sloped in an angle, and that's the part you're putting the oil on. And you just want to put a light coat of oil on it. Okay, now I'm gonna let that heat up. I'm gonna let the beans come up to a boil. I got my jars washed. They're all nice and clean. I'm just gonna go ahead and put the empty jars down in the canner. I'm gonna put some of the water in each jar using my tongs, not my hands obviously. That way they can sit in there and they'll get hot. And whenever it's time to can, I'm just going to take them out one at a time and dump the liquid back into the pot so that they will stay plenty hot until it's time to use them, and everything will be in good shape. This is my little jar grabber. All of this, I got this set whenever I bought my canner. I actually got it from the same place as where I got my canner, but you can find these pretty much anywhere, any store that sells canning supplies, or on Amazon. But I'll show you, it's really cool. You hold on to this black part, and then you can just grab onto your jars like, like this, and you don't have to worry about dropping them or anything, and you don't have to put your hands down in that hot pot, which is really good because it gets really hot in there. Oh, before I do this, I noticed my beans have come to a boil. So I'm going to turn them down. Okay, so I'm reducing them down to medium low or so, and I'm going to put the lid on. And those are going to go for 30 minutes. Oh geez, we're filming over here. Okay, turning them down somewhere because they're boiling like crazy. All right. So there we go, we're all in the canner and it's getting hot. See the steam coming up there. Keeping an eye on these beans, try not to let them boil over all over the place. But, you know, just do the best you can. I got it all the way on low and it's still boiling like crazy, but that's just how our stove seems to be. There we go. See how crazy it is in there? Alright, the beans are done cooking. It's been 30 minutes, so I'm going to move them over to the little canning setup I got and start filling up the jars. So I have my slotted spoon here to scoop the beans out, and it's nice and clean. So I'm going to use my handy jar grabber and grab a couple jars out and start filling them up. You'll want to be really careful with this part and don't accidentally burn yourself with that hot water.
but I just like to grab 2 jars at a time. Later I do grab a couple more because I was just trying to get it all done at the end. But you just want to make sure they stay hot while you're working, so just grab as many as you can fill quickly. Once you get them there, it's time to put your little funnel on top and pour in your beans. For these, I have to leave 1 inch of headspace, so I'll be using my headspace checker to check that in a minute. Now I'm checking the headspace and I noticed I had just a little bit of room left, so I'm just adding a couple more beans on top. And then I'm going to repeat that with the other jar.
Now that I got the beans in, I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of salt to both of the jars. And then I'm going to put hot liquid in. I'm going to use the bean liquid here that I have left, and I also have some boiling water just in case I run out. But we're going to put that in and make sure we still have 1 inch of headspace. Okay, so now we've got our liquid in, our salt in, and our beans in. So now we're going to debubble. So this is where we use the end of our little tool here. It's basically just the handle of this headspace measuring tool. And you're just going to run it around the inside of the jar and try to get any air bubbles out.
You might find you have to add a few more beans after this step to maintain your 1 inch of headspace. I had to add a little bit more.
Next to the last step I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe the rims down with some white vinegar. I'm just going to pour a little bit in this bowl. I have a paper towel and I'm just going to put some vinegar on that and then use that to wipe the edges down. It's really important that the rims are totally clean. So wipe that really good, and then I'm going to use the dry part and I'm going to wipe it again. So now it's time to put on the lids. So I'm going to use this handy little magnet doodad to grab my lids. And I'm going to place it right on top and do the same thing for the other one. So now I'm going to take the bands and we're going to put them on finger tight. So this is just, you put it on and you twist until it's just tight with your fingers. You don't want to crank it on there, but you do want it to be a little snug but not tight. Finger tight is what it's called. So now these two are going to go back into the canner, which has the simmering water going in there, and I'm going to continue and do this with all the rest of them.
Okay, so now we got all the beans in the jars, they're in the canner, we're ready to go. So now I'm gonna get the lid on the canner. Mike's gonna help me tighten all the screws properly because you have to really tighten them pretty good. We open the windows because it gets very, very steamy in the house while this is going. So we're ready to go. So for this canner, there's a little thingy that catches the lip. So you put it on crooked and then you twist it to lock it in place. And now it has these screws, so we have to tighten them. Do one on each side opposite each other, and then you do the same thing until they're all tight, and then you get them tighten them really good. Crank it down so it's nice and on there. Okay, so now we got the lid on super tight, and I have just turned the heat up to medium high, which is what it says in the recipe. And what we're gonna do is we're waiting for the steam. You see there's a little bit of steam coming out of there, a little bit of bubbles of water. We're waiting for it to be a big tunnel of steam. It looks like a tornado coming out of there. And it'll be just like, and whenever it gets to that point, we're gonna let it go for 10 minutes. We're gonna time it for 10 minutes, and then we're gonna put the weight on. Okay, I'm gonna set it for 10 minutes now, because as you can see, the steam's coming out. And in 10 minutes, we'll put the weight on, the 10-pound weight, and then we will start the actual pressure canning part. Okay. So it has been 10 minutes that we've been venting the steam. So now it's time to put our little weighted gauge on there. And we're gonna put it on for 10 pounds of pressure. So right where the little 10 is. So I'm using my tongs because I don't want to burn myself with all the steam. And I'm just gonna stick it right on here, like so. And now we're gonna start watching this gauge, and what's gonna happen is it's going to get up to the 10 pounds mark there where it says 10, and as soon as it gets around there, it's gonna start to jiggle. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, we got the weight on there. According to my manual from my pressure canner, it says you're gonna start counting your processing time as soon as you get the first jiggle. And from my experience, it's usually just past the 10 pounds of pressure mark on the gauge, and then you'll start hearing the jiggles. Then at that point, we're gonna adjust the heat until it just jiggles 1 to 4 times per minute. Unfortunately, we had a bit of an audio malfunction here, but it is jiggling at this point, and that's what it looks like. So I'm going to turn my heat down, and mine's right above low is where I need to turn it for my stove. This will depend on your stove. And then I'm going to set my timer for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Okay, our timer just went off, so I'm going to turn that off. I got my oven on, just ignore that. And now I'm going to turn off the heat. And now we're just gonna let this sit. I'm not gonna do anything to it until the dial goes all the way down to 0. Then I'm gonna take the little weight off. I'm gonna wait a couple minutes, and then I'm gonna take the lid off, and then we'll let the jars cool with the lid off for a while before we take them out of the canner. Okay, we just made it to 0. I don't know if it's gonna focus. There we go. We just got to 0. So I'm gonna take my oven mitt, and I'm gonna take the little thingy off. And it's gonna spew for a couple minutes. I'm gonna set my timer for 2 minutes. And then I'm going to take off the lid. Okay, we waited 10 minutes after taking the lid off, and now the jars have gotten a chance to kind of acclimate to the room temperature. So I'm going to take them out.
carefully. So you don't want to tighten the lids or anything when they come out. You just want to take them straight out, stick them on a clean towel, and let them sit undisturbed for 12 hours. And then tomorrow, once it's been 12 hours, I'll check and see if they all sealed. And if any of them didn't seal, I'll open them. I'll open those jars up and then put them in the fridge because they didn't seal, but hopefully they all sealed. I heard some sealing whenever I opened the lid, so fingers crossed.
Spoiler alert, all of the jars did seal, I'm very proud to say. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please be sure to like and comment and subscribe if you haven't done that already, and we will see you in the next video.